Welcome back to Daily Bible with Chris. This is our part two from not yesterday's Daily Bible reading, but the day before when we completed the book of Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon, as it's known in some translations. It kind of goes back and forth. And we fell a little bit behind because it was a busy weekend. I had a lot of activity going on. I had a football game that we were working at last night that went until about 3 o'clock this morning. And so the voice sounds a little rough. You'll understand why. But I wanted to catch up on this, and then we're to catch up on our commentary for that. So if you've not already watched the previous video, this would have been from Friday, where we concluded the book of Song of Songs, Song of Solomon. I'd encourage you to go back and watch that, or open up your Bible and read the final four chapters, chapters 5 through 8 first, before watching this kind of follow-up video. And then, of course, we yesterday started in the book of Isaiah, and we'll continue that next Bible reading. And I'll try to catch up on that commentary as well. Like I said, occasionally fall behind on the commentaries. Try to stay ahead on the Bible readings because obviously they're a little bit simpler to prepare for. So that all said, thank you for joining me, and we're going to try to get right into this and be as somewhat complete as we can be, but also be quick with this as well as we describe this. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I would encourage you to do that. Hit that subscribe button, give the video a big thumbs up, drop a comment, drop a question. Love to hear from you. So in chapter 5, we pick up chapter 5, verse 1 is kind of a carryover from the end of chapter 4. So you really could read chapter 4 all the way through chapter 5, verse 1, and it would be kind of the conclusion there. But we ended chapter 4 with the idea that they were married. In chapter 3, they are married. Chapter 4, it's all a description of their marriage night together, where the beloved, the husband, the man is speaking to the woman almost exclusively, except for the last verse. He describes her beauty. He talks to her with his words before he reaches to her with his hands or his body. And so he's reaching her with his words first, and then speaking. And then, of course, they have their lovemaking. The woman responds to him. She ends the verse of saying, come with me, come into your garden. It was her garden first. Now she says it's your garden, and enjoy its fruits. In other words, enjoy sexual intimacy of us coming together. And so when we start chapter 5, it's kind of that post consummation. And so it's after that they're in their repose for this verse 1. And it's, I have come to my garden. Now notice he calls it his garden now. She said it was his garden. Now I've come to my garden, my sister, my bride. In other words, my sister, family, a sister is always a sister. You can't. So the idea is she would always be his and he would always be hers. And we're going to hear that statement here. So she is as close and long lasting as a family, as a sister, but she is his bride. She is his wife. And he says, I've done this, and I've gathered my myrrh with my spices. I eat my honeycomb. Look at this description of honeycomb, the sweetness of honeycomb, the fragrance of myrrh, and the fulfillment of wine with milk. There's the idea of the sweetness and the intoxication of wine, but also the idea of nourishment that you get with milk. And then we have an interesting ending to that verse. We have someone else speak, and in mine it just mentions as the narrator, that we have this narrator that speaks from time to time. Many believe this to be God himself speaking upon this couple. So we can think of it that way. And he's speaking to the narrator, whoever it is, this narrator, this fictitious narrator, or whether it's God himself speaking. He sees what's happened. They've come together. They've enjoyed this time together. And he says, eat, friends, drink, and be intoxicated with caresses. In other words, you've feasted together in sexuality, in your sexual time together. Continue to do that. In other words, enjoy each other, enjoy the fruit of each other, the fruit of sex with each other. And like being intoxicated with wine, be intoxicated with your caresses, with the touch and the feel and all of these things. So we see this blessing upon it, and this idea of just continue. And so there probably was a continuance. They'd said they wanted to stay up till the morning. That's happened. And there's probably a continuance of activity. And then we have a bit of a time jump. We don't know, in verse 2, because we go from the marital bed there at the night of the marriage and such, and the fulfillment of that and the continuation of that through the day and night into the day. And then we have the woman again dreaming or daydreaming. She's having a dream, as we've seen before. And she says, I was sleeping, but my heart was awake. So in other words, she was asleep, but she under the idea is she could. Have you ever, we all know we dream when we sleep, but not always do we know what we're dreaming, right? We're not always conscious of it. I think the idea here is that her consciousness, her very being, her was awake in this dream, and she here in this dream, she's in her bedroom, she's in her room. Now, of course, back then you would have had, it's not like today where most husband and wife sleep in the same bed. Obviously, they would have slept together during the time of lovemaking. But then there was this idea, especially with the king, that the queen may have a separate bedroom than the king, and the idea is the king would come to her bedroom, or vice versa. She might be invited into his bedroom for them to come together physically. So there's been some time, okay, from this to this, and we get the idea. She's in her bedroom, she's asleep, but but again, just keep in mind, this is a dream, not necessarily something specifically actually happening. But in her dream, she hears a sound. My love was knocking. Her beloved is standing outside the door and is knocking, seeking entrance into her room, right? He's asking, notice he's not just slamming the door open. I'm the king, let me in, he's knocking on the door. You can maybe even see a parallel to Revelation chapter 3, where we get the picture of Jesus standing at the door and knocking. It's also described that Jesus is the perfect gentleman. He's not going to knock the door down of your heart. And that idea, it's the idea he's knocking on the door of the heart of the church. Will the church let him in? But it's also can be applied to the heart of the individual when he calls for salvation. He knocks and knocks and knocks and he calls, but he's not going to knock the door down and force his way on you. And notice the beloved here is not forcing his way on her. He's going to knock, and then he says, open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. Look at this description. My sister, my forever family, my darling, the one he fell in love with, my dove, the purity of my dove, my perfect one. There's no one like you. I see you as above all other women. My head is drenched with dew, my hair with droplets of the night. It's the idea that he's been out some kind of activity all day. He's come home. He's wet from the activity. The dew is on his head, and he's seeking some refreshment with her, seeking a time with her. But notice his interesting response of the woman. The woman kind of rebuffs his request initially. She starts to give him, I guess, excuses. I've taken off my clothing. In other words, I'm ready. I've taken off my clothing. I'm in bed. How can I put that back on? I've washed my feet. How can I get them dirty? And then verse 4, my love thrust his hand through the opening. My feelings were stirred for him. In other words, this could be him actually putting his hand into the door, not knocking the door, but just showing his hand into the opening, hoping that she would come and take his hand and open the doorway for him. Some say this may be some kind of a sexual entendre of actual physical reach for her, because notice the stirring in her. I'm not really sure there on that. But notice this kind of gets her attention. So notice initially she's a little bit laying in bed. And again, when you come together in marriage, there is this idea of adjusting to each other's needs and time frames. Times when we might have just laid in bed and done whatever we want. Now we have another person who may have desires for us and vice versa, and we have to work within those scenarios. So initially she's kind of making excuses for not wanting to get up, not wanting to get out of it. The idea is like, I just took a shower, my hair is wet, or whatever it might be. She's come up with these reasons. But when he reaches for, he goes beyond knocking, and he kind of reaches through the opening, showing how much he's desiring her. She then becomes quickly enamored with him. She stands, I rose to open for my love. She goes for the door. She opens the door. She says, my hands drip with myrrh, my fingers with flowing myrrh on the handles of the boat. She goes to open the door where he had just had his hand. And there is this idea of this myrrh, the scent that has been left there on the door by her beloved. He's put that there. This was not necessarily an uncommon practice, apparently, that it could be a bit of a calling card from a lover to say, I've been here to see you and I missed you. So I leave some perfume, some scented fragrance there as a sign of, this is in other words, it'd be like a man, maybe he's got his favorite cologne that the woman loves. And so he's showed up, he's knocked on, she's not at home, she's not, or doesn't know he's there. He goes to leave. Rather than leaving a note, hey, I stopped by, or sending a text, he simply would maybe pour a little bit of that cologne, pour a little of that perfume, and say, and she's going to know, oh, my beloved, my husband has been here. I smell his scent. So she opens the door, but he's gone. Okay. So he knocked for a period of time. He talked. He got no response. he left the note of the perfume, and now he has left, and so she sinks when she realizes he's not there. She probably opened the door with this idea he would embrace me, and she would take him into her bedroom, but he's not there. And so, but she doesn't. Now she's at first she was hesitant. Now she's excited, and now she longs for him as he longed for her. Now she longs for him, and so now she begins to search for him. She goes seeking for him, but she can't find him. She's asking, she's calling after him. No one can tell her where her beloved has gone. Again, remember, this is a dream, okay? But she's seeing all this, but she's feeling this reality. She goes about calling to the guards, the watchmen. Where is she? Where we get this idea? They beat and wounded me. They took my cloak from me. In other words, they mistreated her for the fact that she had mistreated her beloved. Again, whether it's physically or whether it's literally with their words, they hurt her. And the idea is almost they left her naked with what they said or what they did to her. And so she feels ashamed for how she treated her beloved. And she calls out to the young women, the daughters of Jerusalem, help me. If you help me find my love, I'm lovesick. Now, again, this is different, maybe a little different than the lovesick before where she's desiring, she's just in love. This is a lovesick, a pain of the fact that she missed her opportunity with her beloved. She feels she's wronged her beloved. She feels some guilt and shame there. And she's just, I need your help to find him. The young women are going to respond. And it's kind of like a question and maybe a sarcastic question here. What makes you, remember he had preferred her. You're my perfect one. I see you as better than everyone else. What makes you better? You make the one you love better than another. In other words, what makes your beloved so important that you need our help to go find him? And what makes you more beautiful, the most beautiful of women, as Solomon has said about you? Again, it may be a sarcastic comment. What makes him better than another that you would give us this charge? In other words, why should we get involved in this? Why is he this great? Now, contrast that with it before that he's described as the young women adored him, right? But there's a bit of this sarcasm. But again, this is a dream that seems to be happening. And so the woman, so she feels like she's been called out by these young women. And so she's going to explain to him why he is the best as far as this maiden is concerned, the young woman, the Shulamite woman. And notice she's going to describe him. Now, remember, he's described her, right? He's described her before. He described her during the time of their coming together, their consummation. We're going to get, and this is the only time in the scripture really that we see a full-on description of her describing him, right? And that's why I think it's more important a lot of times for men to speak to their wives and tell them how beautiful they are, to help them, because it is sometimes a hard thing for a woman to feel pretty all the time, or feel beautiful, or feel preferred, or feel loved, or feel wanted. And so we as men, it's our responsibility to use those words more common than for them to tell us how great we are. Obviously, men want to hear words of respect and words of appreciation, and those things. Certainly we need to hear those things too. But I think it's something more common for the man to take that role. But notice she's going to say he's fit, he's strong. Other things use the idea that he's ruddy, which could be kind of translated as he's manly. He's a man's man. He's fit. He's strong. He's able. He's the greatest among 10,000 men, right? Remember that David was referred to this way. He was referred to as ruddy. He was referred to as, the one who had killed 10,000, compared to Saul. His head is purest gold. His hair is wavy, black as a raven, describing his hair, his head, obviously where he wore the crown, certainly, but his head is like pure gold. How precious that is, how beautiful that is. His eyes are like doves beside flowing streams, washed in milk and set like jewels. The idea that he has these beautiful white eyes, and whatever the color of his eye is set perfectly. So his eyes are even and straight. His cheeks are like beds of spice, mounds of perfume, right? His cheeks. This may be describing more of his beard, which would have been something they would have had then, rather than just rosy cheeks. It's probably describing the beard just based on the fact that because they would perfume their beard, it would smell nice. And she describes it as like a perfume of spice. His lips are lilies dripping with flowing myrrh. In other words, she describes his mouth and how sweet that is. His arms are rods of gold set with beryl, like, just he's strong. His body is an ivory panel. She's describing his this white idea of ivory and purity of ivory covered with this lapis lazuli. His legs are like pillars. He has strong legs. He's fit, right? He takes care of himself. He works hard. He does the things he does. His presence is like Lebanon, as majestic as the cedars. Just as a tall cedar is, so is his presence when she sees him. His mouth is sweetness. He is absolutely desirable. And I would think the mouth is either not only just from what it appears to be, but probably how he uses it in speaking to her. His kisses that come from his mouth, they're desirable. This, my love, notice he's my love, but guess what else he is? He's my friend. That's the ultimate. Marriages where the husband and wife are each other's best friend. In other words, we can't go through life without them. They're the ones that are there for us. Those are the marriages that last. And so she says, he's my love. Like I love him. I'm sexually desiring, but he's also my friend, the one I enjoy spending time with, the one I enjoy doing things together with. This is my love. This is the one I need you to help me find. And so then we see the response in chapter 6. The young women respond, well, where has he gone? Which way has he turned? We will seek with him. Where has he gone? Like, where do you have any idea where he's gone? We will help you. You've convinced us. And then in verse 2, she said, my love has gone down to his garden. Now, just so you're not confused here, because obviously she described her sexuality, her virginity as his garden. This I believe is a physical garden. This is an actual place, like a favored place where Solomon would go. Obviously, to the beds of spices to feed in the gardens. Some other translations say to feed his flocks. Remember, she referred to him as a shepherd and talked about where does he go to. And so initially she couldn't find him. She's kind of all just, you ever just, I guess like a parent, you lose a child, you kind of lose all sense of sanity and you're just going wherever looking for them. But then when you take a moment to reflect and to think about your child, you go, oh, I bet they are here. Or I'll bet they went there or whatever. And then you find, because you know your child. I think of that scene in Home Alone 2, right? The one where he's lost in New York. She's searching, the mother, she's just frantic looking for Kevin, her son, in New York City. And they're like, man, this is a huge city. How would you find him? You're not. And she's like, I've been here. And the cop tells her, think about where your son might be. And it all of a sudden dawns on her. He loves Christmas trees. He loves Christmas. And where's the greatest Christmas tree in New York? Rockefeller Center, right? Rockefeller Plaza. And so she goes there and sure enough, she's reunited. That's a really long illustration, but I think it's kind of that idea that she's frantic at first, but now she's had a moment. She's kind of gathered herself and she goes, I bet I know where he is. That same place where he told me where he feeds his flocks, where I could go and be with him because I want to spend time with him when we were courting. I bet that's where he's at, in his garden. And not only he's working in the garden, he's feeding in the garden, but he's gathering lilies. Who's the lilies for? The wildflowers. For her. He's going out to not only do his job, but while he's there, he's thinking about her. He's going to bring her some flowers back because probably he's done this before. And so that's where he's at. I bet he says, and then she says, I am my love's and my love is mine. He feeds among the lilies. That's where he's at. I know that's where he's at. And notice she says, we see this phrase before, where she said something to where the beloved is mine and I am his. Now she switches that a little bit, and now she says, I am my love's, and my love is mine. In other words, she puts the idea that she is his more pressing than the other way around there. And then, so we get the idea, she comes to the garden, and guess what? She was right. There he is. And so now the man is going to speak. And now we see this, they've had a little bit of a break in their relationship here. She rebuffed kind of his advance there. He's left. He's gone to go do some work since he probably left her to be well enough alone, go to gather some flowers, maybe to come back and figure out why she did not come at his call. And so he begins to talk to her. How does he talk to her? Again, he's going to speak to her of her beauty. We see this once again being spoken to. You're as beautiful as Tirzah, my darling. Lovely. Tirzah was this high spot there in the northern part of Israel. And it was a high place, a very beautiful place. In fact, it was a place where oftentimes some of the kings would they had one of their palaces there in Tirzah before Samaria came into existence in the northern kingdom. So you're as beautiful as this place, right, that the kings want to go to. You're as lovely as Jerusalem. So he's comparing her to two of the most beautiful and powerful cities in all of Israel and Judah, Tirzah and Jerusalem. You're awe-inspiring like an army like just as breathtaking as an army with its banners flying in the wind, marching to war. You're just like that. And then he's going to tell her, obviously, he loves her eyes. Her eyes captivate him. He says, turn your eyes away from me, for they captivate me. In other words, quit looking at me like that, because you're stirring up these passions in me right now. I can't stand it. Just don't, we all have that thing that we fall in love with about a person. Maybe it's, maybe it's a woman's eyes, or maybe it's her smile. For me, it was just, I'm sorry, honey, if you're listening to this, but for me, it was my wife's smile. The first time I met her, I loved her smile. I still love her smile. That's why I like to make her laugh. I say stupid things sometimes or do stupid things because I love to see her smile. I love to see her laugh, even when sometimes it's a scolding laugh. I love to see her smile. I love her eyes as well, and there's plenty of other things I love, but I love her smile. Well, for Solomon, his kryptonite when it came to his lady fair here, his maiden, was her eyes. He's like, turn them away from me. I can't. Kind of like Superman, get that kryptonite away. I'm weak. I can't. Your hair, and then begins to describe her hair. So her eyes are so beautiful. Her hair, like the flock of goats. Flock of goats. It's been a long day. Flock of goats streaming down from Gilead. We get that description again of her wavy hair. Your teeth. We get the same, very similar description of what we read before about her teeth being beautiful. She's got all of her teeth. That her cheeks are like pomegranate. And then we get this description. There's 60 queens, 80 concubines, and young women without number. But my dove, my virtuous one, is unique. He's comparing her to all these other women. Maybe perhaps these were the women of court. Some have said maybe these were some of Solomon's later wives and concubines that he's comparing her to. Obviously Solomon messes up later on and has all these wives and concubines, but there had to be the first one. And I think many people agree that this writing here is Solomon describing that first wife before he blew it later on. And so, depending on when this is happening, maybe he's an older man writing this of how it should have been. Then in that case, these are more theoretical things. These could be actual women or not. But I think the idea is above all these queens and concubines that are parts of a king's power and prominence, I put you above them all. You're my dove. You're my pure one. You're virtuous. In other words, you're virtuous. You have nobility. You're of noble character. You're unique. There's none like you. In other words, there's none like you. She is the favorite, of her mother, perfect to the one who gave her birth. In other words, her mother loves her so. Women see her and declare her fortunate. Queens and concubines sing her praises. They see how lovely she is, and she's with Solomon. And she's like, who is this? And he's describing again, who is this one who shines like the dawn? Beautiful. Then he compares her to the sun, moon, and the stars and an army again. Again, he's describing her beauty. There's none like you, just like the sun and the moon. And then the woman responds, I came down to the walnut grove to see the blossoms of the valley, to see if the vines were budding, the pomegranates blooming. Well, when will this happen? In the springtime, when the flowers begin to bloom. And so she's coming to him during this time of spring and I think the idea too, it's in the springtime of their love together. And she's just taken away and enraptured in this whole situation. She doesn't know what's happening. She feels like she's riding in a chariot with a nobleman. It's just like her feet are taken out from under her here, with her husband, with her beloved and such. And then the young women, come back, Shulamite, come back, that we may look at you. This idea that she's being led away, that she wants to go on this trip. She wants to go on this trip to do this with her husband. And he says, how you gaze at the Shulamite as you look at the dance of the two camps. Now, what that's describing, it's hard to say for sure. There may have been an actual dance going on that they're going to. We don't really know, because then when you pick up in chapter 7, and again, she's referred to here as a Shulamite. That's the description that we see, that she's a Shulamite girl from Shulam. That would have been the area there, I believe, in Galilee where she would have been from. That's the idea. She is a Shulamite woman. And so in chapter 7, we see again a third and final description of her beauty. Okay, we see the previous chapter 6 and chapter 4 are very similar. Chapter 7 is going to be different. He's going to go even more detailed. And so it could be the idea they've gone to a dance and she is dancing and he's appreciating her dance. It could be she's dancing for him privately, especially based on how he describes it. But again, it could be a lot of things going on in this story, this dreamlike existence that she's explaining here. But chapter 7, how beautiful are your feet, sandaled feet, princess. In other words, he starts with her feet. How beautiful are your feet? Then he starts to move up with the curves of your thighs are like jewelry, the handiwork of a master. In other words, your thighs are perfect. They are like they've been crafted. And then he's just working his way up. Your navel is a rounded bowl. It never lacks mixed wine. Your belly is a mound of wheat surrounded by lilies. In other words, these areas here, obviously, these are the areas given, that he's appreciating it almost like a feast that he just enjoys, and he enjoys to look upon. He enjoys, obviously, when they come together as well. And so he's describing. So again, this maybe the idea she's dancing. He's, acknowledging her dance. The fact that she's exposed a lot of her body seems to make it seem like this is a private dance, not something publicly done. Then again, he's going to describe her breasts. They're like two young fawns. That's how beautiful and innocent they are, but they're perfect as far as she's. And then he describes her neck like a tower of ivory. Your tower of ivory with its white color, white nature, the fairness of it all. Your neck is like, your eyes are like pools in Heshbon. Her eyes are beautiful and deep and refreshing. Remember, he loves her eyes. Her eyes are like the pools of Heshbon, where you would find refreshing. And he says, your eyes are like that. For me, when I need that refreshing, I just simply need to look into your eyes. Your nose are like, now he's describing her face. So he started at the feet. Guys, this is a pretty good. He started at her feet. He's worked his way up all the way to her face. Your nose is like the Tower of Lebanon. He's not trying to say she has like a big, long, nose here. He's as a tower would be beautiful. You see like an elegant and such. He's describing probably the color of her, because the Tower of Lebanon. Lebanon is described with this white picture of that. So he's probably describing her nose as itself, even having like a white, like ivory like character to it, and pointing as it does toward Damascus. Your head crowns you like Mount Carmel, one of the mountains. The hair of your head. Now he's just her head. Her hair is like purple cloth. That's how dark her hair is, and royalty. He's describing it as like royalty there. A king would be held captive in your tresses. How beautiful and how you are, and how pleasant, my love, with such delight. So he's like, all of this you have on your body, and now I am yours and you are mine. My body is yours, your body is mine. And now he's going to begin to, he says, your stature is like a palm tree, just like a palm tree. It brings fruit, it brings shade, it brings refreshing. The idea is she's probably very tall and has stature. And then he begins to describe her breasts are like the clusters of fruit from a palm tree. I will climb the palm tree and take hold of its fruit. May your breasts be like clusters of grapes, and the fragrance of your breath like apricots. Your mouth is like fine wine. We begin to see now that he will seek enjoyment physically from her breasts. He will take and we see this referenced in Proverbs. I think it's chapter 5. He describes something very similar, how the breasts of the wife are there to bless the husband, to nourish the husband, to be there. And so he's going to, just as you would reach and take fruit very gently when you're taking fruit from a palm tree, he's going to then take hold of her breasts. He's going to enjoy that. The idea of her breath and they're together, and their closeness is like apricots, like apples. The smell of it is, it's her mouth, her kissing is like fine wine. He's intoxicated. And so he's enjoying it. But notice she is as well, the woman flowing smoothly for my love, gliding past my lips and teeth. In other words, like wine. It's like your mouth is like fine wine. And she continues the sentence that their kisses and such are such that it just goes down smoothly, right? Just like a fine wine tastes such. So I am my love's, and his desire is for me. Again, there's that idea that I am his, and she loves the fact that he desires her physically. And then she's like, and then she calls for him to go with her again and go on a little bit of a trip here. Come, my love, let's go to the field. Let's spend the night among the henna blossoms. In other words, let's go to the country. Let's go to the country house or whatever. And let's just lay out on the field and enjoy ourselves together in the henna blossoms. Let's go early to the vineyards. Again, this description that we saw earlier, similar to chapter 6. Let's go. It's the springtime. Let's see if the vine has budded yet. The blossoms are out. The pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my caresses. So it's the idea of like kind of like a couple's getaway. And it's her now initiating this. There's something when the husband obviously plans something and surprises the wife and says, we're going away for a couple days, or we're just going to go to the beach or go to the mountains or whatever it might be. But now she's taking a little bit of the lead. She's planning it. And I'm going to tell you, as a husband, there's nothing better than that when a wife plans a getaway. That tells us how much we are loved and appreciated. And she's like, let's just go and we'll be together, just the two of us. And we will enjoy our togetherness, our intimacy together. And then there's even the mention of mandrakes, which is a known aphrodisiac. So the idea that it's not only that, and on our doors and at our doors is every delicacy, both new and old. I have treasured them up for you, my love. The idea there would be they would enjoy it. It's also the idea of aphrodisiacs would be used for them people to come together to obviously consummate, but also to procreate. And so this could be the idea, let's come together. Let's do this with the idea toward children. And this idea that there's every delicacy, both new and old. This, I've treasured them. That's maybe the idea of different ways, trying to be delicate here, different ways of lovemaking and ideas and things to do. There's new things they want to try. There's old things that they've done together. But we bring them all together. We will enjoy them. I treasured them up for you. I've kept all of these. I've got plans for you. Let's get to the field. Let's go have some fun. And then chapter 8, we conclude the book with her continuing to talk. And she said, if only I could treat you like a brother, like one who nursed at my mother's breast. I would find you in public and kiss you, and no one would scorn me. All this means is it was publicly acceptable for a woman to kiss one of her brothers or a father in public, but not so much even for a husband and wife to do that in public. That wasn't looked upon the same way, but she loves him so much, she wishes she could kiss him in public as if he was a brother. And remember, he referred to her as his sister. Now she refers to him as like a brother. And then she said, if I could do that, I would just take you with all the purity of our love. I would take you even into my mother's house, who taught me. The idea she was the one that probably gave this Shulamite girl or Shulamite woman the birds and the bees talk of what everything means and how to have sexual relationships with her future husband. And she said, all those things my mother taught me, I would take you and do that. I would give you spiced wine to drink from the juice of my pomegranate. And then she has this vision of what she desired back in earlier in the book, that his left arm would be under my head and his right arm would embrace me. The idea almost like laying kind of on the couch, and he's there and he's caressing her and holding her and kissing her. That's what she desired before. Now she sees it happening in reality here. And then again, there's this idea, young women of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not stir up or awaken love until the appropriate time. And I think that's the idea. Again, it could be, I don't want to wake up from this dream at this time. That's the beauty of what we have going on. It could also be the idea that until you can fulfill the lovemaking session, don't stir it up until you can bring it all to completion there. And then the young women say, who is this coming up from the wilderness? They're picturing people coming up, leaning on the one she loves. And so they're seeing them coming. And she says, I awakened you. And what they're describing is they see them coming together. And she is so close. They're walking together. She's leaning on her beloved. It's not that she's hurt her. She's just leaning in their closeness. And then the woman speaks, I awakened you under the apricot tree. There your mother conceived you. There she conceived and gave you birth. In other words, this idea that they came together sexually under this tree. And it just happened to be a tree where this young man was birthed. Maybe that's the description here. And she says, set me as a seal on your heart, as a seal on your arm, just like a king's seal gave such power. And not only it was a sign for those that this was the king's, just that same thing. Set me as a seal on your heart. In other words, let me be your one and only. Put a seal upon it and on your arm. You wear it on your heart, and then you wear it on your arm for those to see that I am yours and you are mine. Why? Because love is strong. And jealousy is as unrelenting as Sheol. There's a kind of a warning against jealousy there. But putting it out there so that it keeps, so that she can trust him and he can trust her. Love's flames are fiery flames, an almighty torrent, an almighty flame. The idea here is almost like an eternal flame, like the eternal flame of God is love when it's in proper context, when it's being done. A huge torrent cannot extinguish love. In other words, a flood of water can't put it out. Rivers cannot keep it away. When there is true, genuine, deep love, it burns in spite of any attempts of things to happen to come to put it out. If a man were to give all his wealth for love, it would utterly be scorned. And then we have a kind of a passage here where we have our brothers talking, and they're kind of describing her from the past. And they're describing her, the brothers speak, our sister is young, she has no breasts. So they're describing her obviously before puberty, when she's a young girl, before it would be appropriate for her to be married. What will we do for our sister on the day she is spoken for? And if she is a wall, we will build us. So obviously in this situation, maybe the father is not alive, maybe he's not present. And so it's fallen to her brothers to be the ones that would make the marital contract with her future husband, her future beloved. And it was their job to kind of protect her and watch over her. And so they describe her, if she is a wall, in other words, if she's put up proper barriers for her virginity and she's protecting herself, then we'll build a silver barricade on her. We'll give her the things she needs to kind of keep that wall. If she is a door, so I contrast a wall that keeps things out and a door that lets things in. The idea is she is prone to make unwise decisions and unwise decision when it comes to access from a man sexually to her at the appropriate time, then we will enclose her. In other words, we're going to build barricades around her. In other words, we're going to help to try to preserve her virginity so that she has a virginity to give to her future husband. But if she's a wall, we can trust her. If she's a door, we're going to build up some safeguards there to protect her from her own bad potential decisions. And then she's going to respond back to them and describe, and this is her now as an adult, I am a wall. In other words, I have protected my virginity. I've protected my virtue. I've come to the marriage bed. And she said, my breasts are like towers. And of course, now she's developed. Before she had no breasts. Now she is a woman. She's developed. She has these breasts. The idea of her breasts, and this is not describing the size or shape of her breast or anything. I don't think that's what it's describing. I think it's like a tower on a wall is part of that fortress and defensive thing there. My breasts are such that they are part of my defense, even against any unwanted access or unwanted. So to him, I have become like one who finds peace. So in other words, she was these things. She did all these things. She saved up her virtue. She saved up her virginity. She's now given that to her beloved. And then she describes Solomon by name. Solomon owned a vineyard. He leased the vineyard to tenants. Each was to bring for his fruit 1,000 pieces of silver. So she's describing his own vineyards that people would pay and money and such. And remember, she had her own vineyard. I have my own vineyard. The 1,000 are for you, Solomon, but 200 for those who take care of its fruits. And so I think it's both. In reality, the vineyard that she had that was her own that she brings to this marriage, and she gives it freely to him. But I think it's also a description of the vineyard of her sexuality, of her virginity that she has given to him for him to do as he sees fit. And then we see here the man, you who dwell in the gardens, companions are listening for your voice. Let me hear you. And then run away with me, my love. She's like, you're the one that likes to dwell in the gardens as I like to dwell in the gardens. Companions are listening for your voice. Let me hear. I just want to hear your voice. I just want to hear the sound of your voice. And she speaks to him as we end the chapter or in the book. Run away with me, my love, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountain of spices. Remember that she described that the idea is like a young, obviously some time has happened, some maturity has happened. And she's desiring that he would be as he was with her from the very beginning, that he was this young stag. Remember, she described that he's like the spices between her breasts. And then I think the idea is sexually, the idea that he would come and be like a young stag who's, who has the energy and vitality of a young stag, that he would be that way on the mountain of spices, the mountain, I think, describing her breasts. It's a sexual act. Come away with me. Let's go and be as we once were. Let's be once again. So I think it's the idea that let us keep that fire burning of not only our romantic love, our trust and love for each other, but obviously the sexual intimacy that we began all those years ago. Let it be like that again, even in an advanced, a later period. And so the idea they're keeping these things together. Well, that's about as good as I can try to give some description. I'm sure there's a lot of depth. There's a lot more of an allegory that some people pull out of this book, comparing the woman to the church and the beloved to Jesus. And certainly there can be applications there. I just think we have to be careful that we don't go, feeling uncomfortable about this book and what it talks about and try to limit that and try to maybe over spiritualize some things there as well. But I think the idea is here that we can learn some principles in our relationships with our husbands and wives or future husbands and wives, that guys, talk to your wives like Solomon talked to his Shulamite maiden, and ladies, be like her, and desire that beloved and look for opportunities to enjoy that time together. And so be like that at the end, that he desires her, she desires him. They have come together in oneness. And notice God sees this whole relationship and he puts his stamp of approval on it. He's like, eat, drink, intoxicate each other with your love and your caresses. That's what God desires to see in that relationship and with every relationship that is honoring to him. Okay, hopefully that was a little bit helpful. Next commentary will be in the book of Isaiah. And of course, our daily Bible readings will be in the book of Isaiah for a while as well. So thank you so much. God bless you. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day or evening whenever you may be watching this, and we'll see you next time.